It's going. I'll cut the first part off. Here we go. All right. What's going on, everybody? Keep Steely down on here for a second, but hey, it's Rich.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah. Rich the Architect here, back for another episode. And today, got a great guest here with me, Ryan Harbinson from Clearbridge. And actually Ryan reached out to me recently, wanted to be on, so here we are. So excited to have him on. Talk a little business, but we're going to get into some other stuff. Both have some kind of common interest with gaming and whatnot. So let's just jump right into it. Ryan, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. So
yeah. So Ryan, why don't you just start off? Why don't you just tell a little bit about what you do professionally, and then we'll jump into some other things.
Yeah, so I'm with Clearbridge Branding Agency. We're a full marketing firm down here in South Jersey with offices in Philly and Chicago. Really a group of industry vets that come together to kind of start something special. So we're a full agency. So we handle everything from your brand, from branding to creative, and really create campaigns, right? So we just make sure that the messaging and the target audience and what you see is the same across all the platforms to help get your message across to the right people. So what you see on a billboard, it's the same thing you hear on TV or on the radio and social, and it's good. So
okay,
it's
and you
it's crazy.
You cover all those mediums.
Yeah, so we do everything. So we'll handle all the internal and external stuff too. PR, so we do all kinds of stuff. So like we've worked with a lot of food companies, getting them in product placements and stuff like that inside like Costco, all the way to developing like pitch decks for startups or making sure people's email signatures are all the same.
Oh yeah. It's just those simple little things that keep the consistency there.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's funny. Even as a one-person shop, I can't keep those things consistent some days.
Man, you got to keep it all the same. You got to make sure the story is all the same across everything. So a lot of people go rogue and small. I love when people grab stuff off the internet, try to stretch out like a 200 pixel picture to try to make it an 8.5 by 11.
Oh yeah. No, it's funny. I'll get stuff like, I'll get a new client who will even find an image of a floor plan and they'll send that to me, and I'm like, I can't read this.
Like, I don't know what any of the text says, dude. It's 72 DPI.
Yeah. So, and you said you Philadelphia and Chicago in terms of offices. So so nationwide or?
Yeah. So we do everything. So trying to go international. So working on some stuff for that too. So
cool.
See what happens.
Cool.
Yeah, we do a lot. Food's a big world for us. So we love the food world. Restaurants, chains, and like restaurant groups are good for us. Any kind of like food packaging and processing is great for us. So we're in Chicago because of the food factor as well. So
I gotcha.
It's all about food in Chicago, man. I tell you what.
Yeah. No, it's I think this is actually a good segue because some of the work I do, I try to be in like the hospitality industry. So I'm always like, hey, I tell people like, hey, what's a good project for me? And I'm like, places that you go on the weekends, places you go for fun. That's what I want to be involved with. So food obviously everybody wants to eat. So but yeah, so going into that, I know the first time I met you was actually at a ribbon cutting for my wife's business. But that day when
long ago, man.
Yeah. That was 4 or 5 years ago, probably.
Crazy.
Yeah, maybe even 6. I don't. Yeah, it was because I know I was here in 17 and she probably was there for like 2 years. So yeah, maybe 15 even. But I remember there was a point in that ribbon cutting where the chamber was hosting it, and they were like, they gave everybody an opportunity to speak. Hey, what kind of events you got going on? And you spoke up and you were like, hey, I'm opening up a board game shop. And I'm like sitting here, I'm like sometimes those things come up people are talking and I'm like, hey, yeah, okay, you're making mittens for kittens, or, like you're just like kind of like blanking out a little bit. But you say board game shop and I'm like, huh? Because I literally, like, I know you're familiar with boardgamegeek.com, the website.
It's great.
And I literally was like searching for gaming groups and clubs and whatnot. And I was finding things, but not necessarily local at that time. And I will say one of the reasons why I started really getting into it was my brother-in-law in Pennsylvania. He actually used to be a moderator for Board Game Geek.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And you go over to his house and he would get, because he was a moderator, a lot of like, Kickstarter games and
Tons
stuff.
of free shit, right?
Yeah. He would get, test games and stuff. And he would just give me games. I'd go home and he'd be like, oh, I think your 8-year-old would like this game or that. And like, I'd sit down in his basement and just look at his, his wall of like 100 games. And
I got something similar downstairs. So
yeah. I don't quite have 100 games, but it's like you start getting into it and all of a sudden you're like, I ran out of shelf space. I need more space,
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So like, the board game thing was kind of like a happy accident. So like, so I'm with Clearbridge now, but before I ran my own company for about 10 years with 2 other partners. And, we have a software business. So we made like games and, we've got 2 published games on Nintendo DS. And I worked for a publisher for 3 different publishers for many years back in the day. So I got about 100 plus titles under my belt that I was in development with for Sony and Nintendo from the publisher side. So it's funny. And before that, I worked in the retail space forever. So like I've worked at Funko Land and GameStop and Game Crazy and, all that stuff. So, I've always kind of been in the game sector. And when I was 24, a buddy of mine kind of wanted to start up our own software business. So literally same deal, 3 guys in a basement kind of thing. Right. And, flash forward a couple years, we went to an apartment and then we were above an old glass factory that had like a conference room that we kind of rented from them. And, like most people, when you live on on the East Coast, on a very heavily, dominated West Coast industry, you would probably get into the PC market because it's just easier to develop. I mean, this is 2000, man, I don't even know, 2006. So like there was no Unity to create stuff. So Unity is a game engine that you can utilize that will kind of basically like you can write all your code kind of in the same language and then kind of output it to different platforms. So it'll output it into Nintendo code and the Sony code on Mac, on PC, on Xbox and all that. Back in the day, the PS2 days, kind of where we're at, right? You kind of had, if you were a bigger studio and you had an engine that kind of worked on, you could kind of write some of the code similar, but you wouldn't be able to do these full blown like copy paste stuff. Like you'd have to like be able to, all right, we saved 40% of the PS2 code on the GameCube. So we found out it's easier to go from PS2 to GameCube to Xbox. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but that kind of mentality. And we were able to save 40% of the code. So, all right, so let's write the other 60% of the game now that we're on Nintendo's platform, because Nintendo's using a different OS than Sony and Microsoft were using to create games. So we were kind of in this world where it was like, wow, we want to make games through the DS, which was like crazy town because there was no way for us to communicate. We had to be a licensed Nintendo developer, and it was ways for us to try to speak with Nintendo was like really hard. So long story short, we used some connections that we had in the industry, got licensed to be a developer for Nintendo, which is crazy town. And we were able to kind of develop games for Nintendo. And we would run into issues like trying to figure out like how to do stuff. Cause I mean, we were writing all the code by ourselves. Like we were creating an engine that we created to be able to build these games that we were making.
Yeah.
We would have an issue and be like, all right, good. This email looks good. It breaks down everything that we need to know, very quick and to the point. Like, all right, it's going to send this to NOA. So Nintendo of America. Bang. We send it to Nintendo of America in Seattle. They're like, thank you. We've received your email. We are now going to translate it to Japanese and send it to Nintendo of Japan. They're like, okay. So then Nintendo Japan gets the email. They read the email in Japanese. And then they say, okay, we got it. And then they send it back to NOA. Then NOA goes, we've received your email from Japan. We're now going to translate it back to English for you. and then they send it back to English, and then they send it back to us, and we're like, great. Thank you so much for that 2-week email process. However, our questions to our problems have not been answered in any way. So here's a new email that we are sending now. And I think there was no forums for us to go to. Like
Mhm.
it just the world wasn't there. So, long story short, we kind of moved around a little bit, made our way through, and eventually ended up in a small town in South Jersey, and it was zoned residential or zoned retail. So we talked to the town, and we're like, at this point, we already had a game published on the DS, and we're like, oh, we want to move in. We're working on our second game, and they're like, well, this is zoned retail. What are you guys going to sell? And we're like, we're going to sell our DS game. So we had like a display case with like one DS game in there, like this is
Yeah.
for sale if you want to buy it, right? So as we were doing that, we were coming up with ways to kind of fund the software business, and we were going to like yard sales, and we were flipping board games.
Hmm.
10 cents, 25 cents, 50, sell them for $4 or $5 at like local nerd cons, make some dough, and then buy new monitors, pay our team, like all that stuff. So eventually we wind up having like 1,000 games between me and my two partners. And we're like,
Mhm.
shit, we might as well just sell board games. Fuck it.
Right.
Like, let's see what happens, right? So we kind of all were ex Funko, GameStop, Game Crazy guys. So we just kind of took that model, flipped it around, and we did the board game thing.
Yeah.
And like the first month, it was like, I mean, mind you, the facility that we were in, or the retail space we were in, was about 650 square feet. 80
Mhm.
square feet of that was a retail store.
Yeah.
80. So you walk in, you're like, oh, and here's the store. Okay, here we go. And I can walk, and now here's a shelf. Okay, have a nice day. And the first month was like, okay. And then like the second month came in, and we were like, hey, we made $300 this month. That's pretty cool.
Mhm.
And word kept growing and growing. And then fast forward like 4 years later, we're in a 5,000 square foot facility known as the Nerd Mall. So we do board
Mhm.
games, and we do action figures, and there's video games, and there's records, and there's yo-yos, and there's comic books. So it evolved into this thing, and kind of no longer in the game space, making games more like website and like applications and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
crazy ride, man, crazy
Yeah.
ride.
Yeah.
I retired a couple years back, but my partners are still running, and they're kicking
Mhm.
some ass. And the Nerd Mall it's pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I've been there a couple times, and my kids, like, what is it? With the Funko.
Funko Pops
Uh,
and all that.
yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't imagine being like 10 years old being able to go into that store. I would lose my mind.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, my kids go. My kids gravitate to that area like every time we
Yeah.
go, and I end up buying like 5 of them. I'm like, I just wanted to come for one board game, but get a game and 5 or 6 of those, or depending, how many of my kids are with me. you know.
Yeah, so it was a crazy space, man. We had a lot of fun like developing stuff and some crazy stories. I mean, if you ever start a software company, I mean, in the early days, I mean, mind you, again, this was like in the early mid 2000s, and we're developing stuff, and we're like, oh yeah, we're starting a PC company. Oh, yeah, we're gonna do this and that, and people are like, oh, here's my old computer. Dude, we had like 5 scanners because people were just unloading their shit on us. They're like, oh, take my scanner. You'll need the scanner for your technology company. Like, so we had like this room at one of the guys' apartments. He literally had a 2-bedroom apartment. One of the bedrooms was literally like a Frankenstein room. It was like
Yeah.
2 of the guys that were like total like PC nerd heads, and they're just like Frankenstein in parts with pieces, and they're like, give me that GPU. They're like, and
Yeah.
it's like, we got so much shit plugged into his house. He literally plugged in his Christmas tree, and the whole outlet caught on fire, and the tree caught on fire.
Yeah.
It's crazy shit.
Yeah.
So
No, it's funny. Well, like the 3D scanning company I work with, they have a spot in Old City in Philly now,
nice.
and they do some reselling for like drone equipment and 3D scanning equipment and all that. And it's like, it's very
It's good.
similar.
It's a good market to
They,
be in, man. Use technology, stuff like that is killer.
yeah, yeah. And they, it's funny because you were saying earlier that, you essentially you identify kind of like a gap in the market.
Yeah.
And right now there's a gap that they've identified, and they're actually developing their own software to try to fill that. And actually, hopefully soon.
I tell you, man,
Month.
I've seen that now. I think it's a trend that's really starting to happen, is that there's a weird world where everybody is creating software that is specifically now niched for those markets only, and they're blowing it up because a lot of it is crazy. I mean, I've seen like the POS stuff is like crazy. I mean, that's really where it is, where it's like these POS slash like internal like accounts payable and inventory systems that all communicate together but are nichey for that one industry. Like I know there's a really big one that my wife just integrated into her place where she works at an eye doctor, and it's just meant for like eye care specialists. We're working with a company that's doing like inventory management for like beverages. I know another one that's doing like, we just brought one in that's like for marketing and branding companies only. So like starting to see this trend where it's like all these people are trying to use like these big Fortune 5,000 companies that are only saying, oh yeah, our thing works for everybody. But there's so many like niche stuff that is really like for that industry, and people are coming in and really changing it on the software side. And cloud-based, I mean, people are still using. I want to see how many people are still doing remote, like server in the
Oh
back
yeah.
in the back closet, we're right into the hard drive every night shit that still goes on. And it's like, dude, that's just, you can't be in that because now you can't log into that anywhere. Like I can't
Yeah.
go onto my phone and log onto the. So I mean, that's the world that we're seeing, is just more of the accessibility to the
Oh yeah.
software itself.
No, the main software that I use is subscription based, so I pay a monthly fee,
And guess
and
what?
then
That fee is helping them develop even more and kicking ass with it.
oh yeah, well, and it's funny because it used to be you'd have to buy it outright, and I literally like a license used to when I first started back in '09, my license for my software was like $6,000. So I had to
So
figure
much
out a
money.
way to get $6,000, but then I also had an employee, so I actually really had to figure out a way to get $12,000
Woo.
to just pay for, and of course it took me like I got I think I did credit cards with it or something, but it took me a couple years to pay all that stuff off, right?
Yeah, or
You
$10 a
know,
month.
yeah, and then it was like, yeah, now I do. I mean, mine it's a couple $100 a month,
Yeah,
but
but still, it's
yeah,
still not
it's
six grand
still
out of your pocket.
yeah. I would rather do that, and there's options you
I
can
mean,
do
look at Adobe.
annual.
Adobe's been doing that for how
Yep,
long now?
yep,
Because
yeah,
they were getting crushed from pirates, man. Pirates
uh-huh,
crushing them, and now it's crazy. It's $20 a month per program.
right.
Big money, dude.
Yeah, ours are actually packaged where you it's actually cheaper for you to buy. Like so, I have Revit, Autodesk, or I'm sorry, AutoCAD, and a couple other programs. It's cheaper to buy them as a package together than to
Well,
buy them in the.
that's how they get you.
Yeah, yeah,
The more you
but
buy, that's the classic. The more you buy, the better the deal, baby. Come on.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, but obviously if I buy it individually, but the other thing is, and I find some resistance from some people in my industry is there's essentially an add-on where I can save my files to a cloud server, and
Mm.
that gives me the ability to say, hey, especially if I'm like going to outsource work, I call up the person I'm outsourcing to, and I'm like, hey, I got to set up here. All you got to do is just log in and open up the file. I'm going to open up the file too. We can work on it at the same time, and we save it to the cloud server
Best.
as if we were working in a network environment
Yeah,
in an
it's the
office.
best. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. So, and it's like for like $100. There's just like people who are like, well, it's $100. That's way too much. I'm like, no, it's not. You know how much we're going to get done? How much we can make if we do this?
Well, and I think what's great about that too is that like the subscription-based services are really allowing those companies to like grow.
Mhm.
Look at the beginning, like right. So when Xbox Live came out, Xbox Live is always charged. It's always been $50, right? So like,
Yep.
you want to play online, it's $50. And then Sony was playing catch up during the PS3 days and actually won that console war in the end. Believe it or not, they sold more PS3s than 360s at the end of the life cycle, which is crazy. But Sony
Mhm.
also always has a 10-year life cycle dedicated to every console. Always 10-year minimum on every console. So if you've got a PS4, you still got a long time before they're stop making PS4 games.
Mhm.
Anyway, and Sony was trying to play catch up, and they're like, "Oh, free online, free online. You can play online for free," and you could see the difference. And then they started charging for it, and now the PlayStation Network is killer.
Yeah.
So I think that's important, is to have those subscription based models. But and with that, it's crazy to just see where like the online gaming like process has like changed so much. I mean, obviously all the PC people are like "Oh, you noobs, we've been playing
Yeah,
online since Doom 2. Like, get
right.
out of here," and but like you're starting to see, like, I mean, look at the models that are going on right now, the games that they're playing in competition, like with like Warzone and Call of Duty. Like, dude, Call of Duty Warzone is a free download. It is a
Yeah.
100 gig free download,
Oh yeah, yeah,
but it's a free download. And
yeah.
like this new free to play model is kind of changing the way that people play games too, right? So like,
Mhm,
I've been playing a new one called Vigor, Vigor. It's great.
mhm.
And it's kind of the same thing, but it's definitely not as big as as Duty is. It's only like 20 gigs to download, but
Yeah.
you're starting to see that competition, and so many people are playing games online, especially this last year. I mean, it's insane. And plus,
Oh yeah.
we had um, a console release. We had a dual console release this year too, which is crazy. So, like, the industry as a whole is at like 75 plus $billion.
Hmm.
It's made video games last year made more money than movies, music, and North American sports combined.
Right.
What?
Hmm.
And esports as a whole, which is just this little baby infant child, is just under 2 billion. And it's crazy to see people playing games online is now really nuts. I mean, I think what the generation gaps are starting to see is that really anybody that's under 45 years old, that's what we did, man. We played games. It's just what we've
Hmm.
done. It's what we've done since we were kids, since we were
Yeah.
younger. I mean, like the Atari guys, maybe not so much, but if you grew up as an NES kid, that's really where it started. Because I
Yep.
know a lot of people that played like Atari and stuff, and like Coleco and Intellivision and like Master System and all that kind of stuff. But really,
Hmm.
NES is really when it, kind of the culture kind of started. And you got to remember too, like when Famicom came out in Japan, they thought about it. It was just a kid's toy. And when it came over to the US, that's really when it kind of got the hype of being more of, I mean, it's a great name. I think people forget that NES stands for Nintendo Entertainment System, because
Yeah.
it's what it was. It was kind of this different kind of thing. It's a pretty big jump from a company that started in the 1880s making Hanafuda cards to making to making full blown Nintendo consoles. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think I'm actually 46, right? So I was prime age when all
dude,
that was coming out. I mean, I
no,
remember like, going to my buddy's house down the street and he had Super Mario Brothers and seeing that for the first time
man,
and all
Duck
that stuff.
Hunt. I mean, how dope was Duck Hunt when it first came out? Like, it
Oh
was
yeah.
ridiculous, and it sucks because you can't play any of those light gun games anymore because they actually, the way that those guns works, it's the remote reflects off of the TV. So
Oh,
you
the
hit that.
glass.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
infrared that kicks off the glass and then reflects back into the gun, and that's how the
Uh-huh.
gun knows where you're at. But there's no glass in any of the TVs anymore.
Yeah.
So you literally have an old CRT television, to play it, and nobody wants an old one. I mean, nobody wants like a 32-inch tube.
Right,
Jeez,
right, right.
it
Like
weighs like
like
700 pounds.
yeah, yeah. It's funny. Like I think of like, the WandaVision show. I'm sure you saw that.
So amazing.
Yeah, but like when they find the TV, the TV thing, and she's just like, I need old TVs, and they're
Yeah,
like,
it's like good luck.
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah,
it's funny though because I remember, um, I mean, I was at my old house and I ended up buying an NES like on eBay or something, and
sweet,
my oldest was maybe like 10, so we
perfect,
set up the NES in his room and I had an old TV, the old glass TV or whatever, and
cool.
we were playing Duck Hunt. And I like now it's funny that you said that because I never even thought about
Another
how it
really
worked.
good light gun game too, if you can find it, if you still got that setup, is Hogan's Alley. Did you ever play
Okay,
that?
yeah,
So
yeah,
when
yeah,
you're like shooting the bad guys,
yeah, yeah.
that's a
That was like
that's a
the
great,
Wild
like
West, right?
the cop simulation kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I don't
Great
know if
one.
I still have that TV, to be quite honest. Now that I think about it,
So
we
you're
kind of quick.
thinking Wild Gunman. That was the Wild West
Oh,
one.
okay,
Hogan's
yeah,
Alley was like the actual bad guys.
yeah.
There
I
wasn't
got you.
many. There was only a handful, and then there was Gumshoe too.
Yeah.
So it's just those
So
4 or 5.
well, so it's funny. Well, it's funny. But yesterday, again, my oldest, he's now 16, so he's at that age where, like, his one buddy now has his license. So they're on spring break this week from school. his buddy stopped over. They went to Woodbury to what's the new place that's at the mall? Not Woodbury, Deptford.
Like round one or something.
Round one, yeah. Because he goes, oh, I'm going to an arcade, and I'm like,
there's an actual arcade in the Deptford Mall.
Yeah,
like legit, like not that place. Like the guy has like old school machines, like MK2 and all that in there.
Right. So, but he ended up going to round one, and I was like, that's cool. Like I just loved that he was just like, didn't call it round one. He just said, Dad, I'm going to the mall. We're going to the arcade. I was like, oh, I got the feels. Like it took me back because that's
I don't know. It's they don't get it, man. There's something magical about that back in the day. And then there's always that one kid that like knew all the Mortal Kombat fatalities, and the game had only been out for 2 days. And I'm like, dude, how do you know how to do that already? I'm like, there's no internet here, bud. Like it's 1994. Like what is happening?
Yeah. No, because I was always into like NBA Jam, and
that all day.
On Friday nights you'd go, and like you'd hardly could get a chance to even get to the game. There was just a huge crowd around that all night long.
Or if you get lucky, they got like the 6-player X-Men.
Ah, yes.
All running off that Konami engine, like Simpsons ran off of that engine too.
Yep.
That was a great. The Turtles ran off that engine. It was a great, like, just Konami had developed this amazing side scroller beat 'em up engine that was just phenomenal.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I had a conversation where like we were talking about Marvel movies with my son, and I just was like telling him how like this. I'm like, the X-Men movies are okay, but I really wish the X-Men would be like the top notch version, and hopefully maybe in the future they'll relaunch that.
It's coming.
Yeah.
It's all coming. They're setting it all up for Doctor Strange in the end. Watch.
Oh yeah.
So. But it's crazy, right? So like all that going on, like I and it's funny to see. Like I hear this all the time, like because I don't watch a lot of people playing games online, right, with the esports stuff, but like I do watch some of it, and people are like, I don't know how you can watch guys play video games online. I'm like, I don't know how you can watch people play football. I'm like, why do you watch people play football? Because you're not good at football, right? And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, this dude is nasty at Call of Duty and can do a no scope snipe from 1,000 feet away. So I could never do that shit. So I'm gonna watch this guy just murk everybody all day. Like it's awesome.
Yeah. No, I'll sit there and watch my son, because I suck at the first person shooters, and we'll play like Star Wars. What is it? Star Wars Battleground.
Battlefront.
Battlefront, yeah. And I'll play for a little bit, and he'll just wreck me, and I'm like, you know what? I'll just watch you play. It's cool,
If I didn't have a job too, I would be sick of video games. Okay.
Yeah. But I think I've told you this before, but like when I was watching I came downstairs, my son was playing. I thought he was playing, but yeah, he was just watching somebody play, and I was just like, I asked him that exact question, and I was just like, well, why are you watching somebody play video games? And he turned to me, he's like, well, you watch the Eagles on Sunday. And I was like, that's a good point.
Touche, young man.
Yes. I was like, all right, continue what you're doing. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just people are good, man. I mean, there's a lot of games. I mean, I don't really do a lot of the FPS stuff anymore. Kind of more of an old school guy. But I play everything. So
yeah, I purposely don't really get much onto the video games, because I just know how I used to be. It's like I'm like, no, I'll just get so sucked in, and I got 3 kids and all that, so I'm bad enough with the board games, so I'll stick with that for now.
Yeah, I mean they're doing a lot of stuff, right? I'm really curious to see kind of where the evolution of like the esports stuff comes into, because you've got like the classic shooters that everybody's doing. You've got like fighting games, like they're doing like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter mostly. I mean, there's some other stuff out there. Then you got like Diablo, and they're doing all that MOBA stuff. But I think there's a huge audience out there to do like legit old school competitions for like stuff under like PS2 and under. And I think it's like an area that can really expand the market. It can kind of like, it's almost like getting the licensing to reruns. That's how I look at it, right? Like the TV land stuff is kind of like, just old shit that people forgot about, but people loved. Like I would love to see like SOCOM 2 tournaments on PS2.
Yeah.
like stuff that people played a lot back in the day that maybe got lost because now we're at PS5 and Xbox, whatever they're calling it these days,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of stuff out there. Like, I think people would be all over like Mortal Kombat 2 Super Nintendo tournaments. And I think
Yeah.
people would love to watch live, Mario speed run competitions and things like that. Like I think there's a lot of opportunity for old school esports to really kind of make its way. And I know everyone's really into, you know, uh, uh all the shooters and soccer with RC cars and and Fortnite and
Oh,
all
right.
that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but I think there's an opportunity. Like, I mean, even just like old school Halo, man, like be great to
Hmm.
see it. Just like Halo 1, straight up. You know that people are going to use the handgun that's just really OP, but you just got to know how to play right. Hang them high, uh, capture the flag on hang them high with shotguns only or something. Like let's
Yeah.
let's let's switch it up and see what happens. And I think there's a huge audience out there to watch kind of like the fun Xbox original
Yeah.
stuff to kind of come
No,
out. So,
I watched the other night. I was just going through the channels, and Swingers was on.
nice.
You
It's a great one.
and they had it was the scene, the NHL '95 scene where he makes Gretzky's head bleed.
It's
If you
great.
if you remember the scene,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that took me back. I mean, that was college for me, freshman year, sophomore
Oh
year,
yeah.
dorm. You
People
know,
cheat people cheating with the just score in the corner of the goal. I
yeah,
know
yeah,
all that.
yeah. Just all that. Like I think when you're talking about that, I'm like, I think you could even go further back
Yeah.
with some of that
I
stuff.
think it opens up the world for that kind of stuff. And I think people want to see it. And then, you could have a lot of fun with there's such a catalog of old stuff, man. That's I think kind of left out of the equation because everyone wants to play Fortnite and Overwatch and all that stuff, which is
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
And those things are awesome. But I think part of that too is understanding like what does the mental health elements look like for that as well too? Because when people say that they're training, when they hear training, they're like, oh, the kids are training. It's like, no, the kids are playing games.
hmm,
And like, there's a lot of coaches that are out there now that for some of the, the more established like collegiate leagues and like the major leagues of esports that are integrating mental and physical health into the training sessions.
right,
There's a guy, I think he's in Japan. He was like the Street Fighter champion. He's got a Street Fighter team that he runs, and part of their stuff is no, we're going outside for 2 hours and we're exercising. Like
right,
that's what we do. And we're not eating Mountain Dew and Doritos all day. Like we're actually like doing balanced diets because like if you are mentally and physically fit, then you're more sharp when you're playing games. Like it's just a facts. So it's
yeah,
good to see that that's coming in because some of these teams, I mean, are making a lot of money and there's a lot of special interest groups that are kind of making their way into it. I mean, remember the kids that won the Fortnite competition in 2019 won more money than the guy who won Wimbledon.
right,
That's crazy shit, dude. Like
hmm,
the guy isn't a pro tennis player making 2.7 million and the kids that won a Fortnite competition won 3 million bucks.
yeah,
What? And they're only like 15, 16 years old. Like that's crazy money.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
it
and I've seen with some of the people I've met through some of the esports stuff where they were telling me about like how professional sports teams like and the NBA is like a really great
oh it's
in
coming,
terms
man.
of that thing where they have the Sixers built their new facility in Camden, right? Well, there's an esports section to that training facility for their NBA 2K
Dude,
team.
they play the shit out of 2K all day. 2K is a big freaking deal. Like
Yeah,
that's all coming in. And all the ex athletes are all coming into. I mean, look at Marshawn Lynch, right? Marshawn Lynch is involved with that football league, which is like it's fan controlled football. And it's
oh
like
yeah,
it's like a gamification of football where like you download an app, there's 5 plays available, everybody picks a play, and then whoever gets the majority, that's the play that the team runs. So there
yeah,
is no like head coach, like the fans are like coaching the team.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
like you're seeing this gamification element getting integrated into a lot of people's like day-to-day lives
Oh
because
yeah.
people
Well,
love games, dude. They just love
yeah.
games.
Well, look at all the sports betting. Like you can live sports bet now on like a particular play, right?
It's crazy.
I'm watching the Sixers game last night. Every commercial cycle, one of those sports betting apps comes up. the fancy sports, things like that. Yeah. So it's all intertwining.
It's
and
coming, man. It's
and
crazy.
heck, it's already here, to be quite honest. And
Well,
and
esports is through the roof now. And like I said, from last year, people were stuck in the house. Like, just gonna watch people play games. Like, that's just
yeah,
what they're gonna do. It's
yeah.
just
And
gonna happen.
I've seen how the casinos try to jump on it. They want stuff in their facilities because they see it. There's a revenue stream there for them, but they're also seeing it as a marketing tool. Now they can market, I guess, legally to
Younger
people who are under
audience.
18,
Yeah.
right?
But the
Who
problem with
eventually
that
would.
is that people are trying to jump in like head first and not understanding that if you're creating an esports arena or some sort of a facility that's going to host esports, you need to understand the technical
Oh,
difficulties of that.
yep.
I mean, it's not just like bring the Comcast guy up and put a little router in the middle of the corner and go, okay, the password is gap 4687. Everybody
Yeah.
log in. Like, no, dude, like you need to have like a full, like, I mean, it's insane. You got to have like a cloud service like inside your facility with all like Cat 6 all run hardwired
Yep.
and refresh rates of all the screens need to be like unbelievable. Like it is a large investment.
Yeah. No,
So
I sat down with somebody who was looking to do stuff in some of the casinos in Atlantic City, and I mean, you know who it is. But one of the things we talked about was like, look, these theaters and that they have probably the audio visual is covered, but I'm like, we need to go in and see feasibility in terms of what things you're just saying there.
hell
All
yeah.
the internet, the networking capabilities, all that stuff, because they're power. Like they may not even have enough power
Yeah.
for that stuff.
I think if anybody has the opportunity to do it, it's probably Hard Rock just because they're the newest, right? And they have that amazing facility that can sit like 7,500 people, which would be awesome. And then they
Yeah.
have everybody on the stage and running all the power for that. But like again, it's more than just kind of click clack. And I'll tell you right now, those people will get pissed if like shit is not working right. Like those
Yeah.
organizations will just never come again.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
it's like having like a football game and you've not everybody's got pads.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We're
I
not coming back here.
Yeah. Personally, I think Ocean is might be the best equipped because I don't know if a lot of people know this, but there's a second theater space in that building that's never open.
I never knew that.
Yeah, and it seats maybe. I mean, it was originally because I worked on the project, but that theater space seats maybe about 550 people. It was supposed to be kind of like maybe like a comedy club,
Cool.
or if they had some type of Cirque du Soleil, not Cirque du Soleil, but some
Yeah,
type
but
of.
can I tell you, 550 people is nothing for esports. And if they're gonna do like some sort of a championship, I mean, dude, in South Korea they did. Riot Games does League of Legends. They had like over 100,000 people or 100
Yeah.
million people, something ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, do you think so like if we talk about esports, but I mean you're talking like the professional leagues, but what about the more local? Because I know there's high school clubs, college clubs.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah,
there.
that's the crazy part is you're starting to see the actual like creation of those things happen. So like there's like pro leagues that are coming in, which is like the Philly Fusion and all that kind of stuff. But then
Yeah.
you're seeing a lot of collegiate leagues. That's really where there's a lot going on. So college leagues that are going on. And think of it as like having like a baseball team, a football team, a hockey team, a field hockey team, a track and field team. But the equivalent to that is a different game.
Yeah.
So there's like a Fortnite team, and there's a Rocket League team, and there's a Diablo team, and there's a Street Fighter team. I mean, depends on where it is, and it also depends on what the other schools are playing and what those leagues look like and what the competition for those leagues are. But then you can also create your team as like Stockton. I know Stockton has a pretty good Rocket League team, but if they created like a different team that was like, we play Mortal Kombat, then they could either be part of the collegiate Mortal Kombat leagues or find other independent leagues that are running Mortal Kombat tournaments and then be a team within that league.
Right.
So, it's crazy.
No, well, do they have anything in terms of like, I'm just thinking of like an Olympics, right? Where you have 4 or 5, 10 games, whatever it is. Each college has their different the Rocket League, that type of thing.
Don't
Where you
think
had
there is
multiple games?
anything. I don't think there is anything like that. Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm sure that stuff is coming at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Esports looks like, actually, I'm just doing live reads here. They're talking about integrating esports, hope possibly into 2024 Olympics,
Oh,
Summer
wow.
Olympics.
Okay. Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What that
Yeah.
consists of, I'm not sure, but I'm sure that
Right.
it's something's gonna be. Look, here's what it is: if something's making money and there's opportunities to sponsor things and there's opportunities to push out product lines and brand those things and market those things, everyone's going to be jumping on board. The esports train is setting sail. It's already in the middle of the ocean, and people are like, "Video games are stupid." I'm like, "Yeah, but esports was a 1.8 billion-dollar industry last year, and the video game industry as a whole was over 75 billion." And they're like, "Actually, I really like video games. I just remembered, like that's the mentality that's going on right now."
Yeah.
And when you have this Gen Z group and the millennial group like us and kind of the Gen X that's all kind of living in that same kind of like ecosystem, that's the audience to go after. The 50 and under is where it's at. Everybody above a certain age, I mean, like I said this the other day, like it's absurd how different like one generation to the next is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like my dad would never have like a Batman figure on his dresser
Right.
ever. Never
Mm-hmm.
ever. I'm like, and then like this is where I hang out, and
Yep.
there's nerd culture all over my house. So
Mm-hmm.
like, it's just the way it's going, man. And like, my mom can have little baby snow angels and have a whole case full of them, but if I have Batman and Superman, that's weird. I'm like, same shit, dude. Like you're out of your
Yeah.
mind.
Different. Yeah. Same shit. Different knickknack.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, and it's funny too because it's like to get back to like the college with the esports is there. I mean, there's scholarships out there for students now
Oh, it's coming in hot, man.
through those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's high school teams too.
Yeah.
High school
No,
esports is starting to get really big now too.
yeah. I've seen that, and I always kind of I have a. I don't talk too much about it because it's just a business idea, but I always thought that when we were talking about arcades earlier,
Yeah.
is there a potential to have local arcades again, but like geared more towards esports in some way?
Yeah. I
I don't
mean,
know.
the competition world is where it's at.
Yeah.
And if you have a facility that's there, it's good. I would say that the arcade world has changed, right? Uh,
Hmm.
and I think that you need to have beer, which is why the barcade guys do so well, because
All
people
right.
want to play and drink because it's all a certain age.
Hmm.
And then I think also part of it too is understanding that arcades are starting to come hot again. I mean, look at One Up. One Up does a great job on doing all the emulation arcade machines that you can buy. They have all kinds of stuff, NBA Jam, and they have X-Men, and they have all this stuff, or X-Men versus Street Fighter, and they're like $300, and you just kind of throw one in the corner of your basement, and it's like super cool to have like old school arcades again. So, I think people miss the arcade world a lot, and it died mostly because the home consoles came out. And
Hmm.
I think the last really big arcade stuff that you saw was probably around the mid 2000, 2001, right? Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was like amazing as an
Hmm.
arcade machine. And then Dreamcast really did like probably one of the greatest like arcade ports of all time with Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on the Dreamcast. And I think that was
Hmm.
kind of the beginning of the end, which was already kind of dead, but people would definitely go to the arcades to play Marvel Capcom 2. But I don't know. I'd love to see the arcades come back. And I love to go to an arcade that's not just like tickets and toys. So
Yeah, no, because I was about to say that. I was like, oh no, kids will do the arcade as long as you're getting tickets coming out of those.
yeah, nah, I don't got
They're
time
all
for
into
that.
that. But yeah, no, I mean I think of it as like well, like you're like the let's just I've seen with your board game shop had you had an area where people could rent games
Yep,
or play games
all,
like on a Saturday.
yeah,
So
we had
something like
open
that.
play tables and all that stuff.
Yeah. And you're over in Pennsylvania now, right?
I am in PA, yes.
Are you like Westchester or
I'm
something?
down in Delco.
Okay. So because I believe there's a place in Westchester
Yeah, been
that
there.
yeah,
King's Cradle or something like that.
Yeah, where they have like you can go in and you rent a not a console. Well, I guess a
You rent.
console or a
I think they
PC.
were like renting tables and stuff. I think he said.
Okay, well, but video games.
Oh yeah, I don't know that. I mean, there's a board game
Yeah.
place in Westchester.
Okay, yeah. So no, I'm talking about I think a video game place where they have like a room of PCs and that, and you might be able to rent it out as a group.
Cool.
Or yeah, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I know I saw one there because yeah, because there's even like, let's go to the board game side. Like you were mentioned, there's a board game shop, but there's like I've seen board game shops that have like, there's one in Philly. What is it called? That has like, it has a cafe.
Yeah, great spot. Yeah, I know those guys. Yeah, they're awesome.
Down in Fairmount.
Mm-hmm.
Thirsty Dice is the name. Yeah. So you can go, you rent a game, you rent whatever game, and they have like hundreds of games. And you and I know, we know some of these games are pretty complicated. So
yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's also Thirsty Dice is good, and then there's another guy. What's his? I forget their name too. But yeah, there's a lot of cool spots that are starting a Red Cap too. Red Cap.
Where's Red Cap at?
He's down in Philly too.
Okay. Yeah. No, I've had a couple projects in the Fairmount area, so I've gone by the Thirsty Dice a couple times. But
yeah, it's interesting. I just think that people are underestimating the money that can be generated in nerd culture, and I think that's what you're going to wind up seeing in the next couple years, and you're going to see kind of that old school mentality come back. And I think people are, it's either in with it or you're not, and if you're not, you're going to miss out on opportunities to kind of, integrate the money that nerd culture has bring in, and board games and video games. I mean, we say it all the time, and it was one of the things we used to say about the store is that the dining room table was the first entertainment center, and it always has been. And people I think are starting to be overwhelmed with all the content that is coming out from everybody and their mom creating some sort of plus integrated streaming services where everyone's like, okay, I'm done. I'd rather play something. And I think you're seeing that happen. And the cool thing is that there's tons of stuff for 2 players everywhere. Tons of stuff.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Jaipur City, Lost Cities is one of my favorites. Patchwork, love Patchwork. Rivals of Catan, I have that, is great too. And then like old school stuff too. So, and I think there's opportunities to kind of go back in the old school board game world. Like, prime example, people hate Monopoly because they don't play it correctly. Monopoly is only about an hour long if you play it the right way. Okay.
Yeah.
When you go around the board 2 times, all the properties are sold, because if someone lands on a spot and doesn't buy it, it doesn't just get unsold. It goes to auction, and auction starts at $10 for a property. And then it goes around the table and it's an auction. And if you don't win it, then you don't win it. But after everything's sold 2 times, then you play the game. And it's actually one of the greasiest and funnest games ever, because if you land on a space, you can wheel a deal all day. I mean, it's just real estate. So you're like, look, I know I don't have the rent for this, but this is what I'm going to do. I'll give you my extra $200 when I come back around, go, and I'll give you this $20 for now as a safe keep for it. And then you make your way around, go, and they're like, all right, man, that $200, you're like, it's not going to pay you. And it's like, this is how we're playing the game. This is how we're doing. We're playing greasy.
Yeah.
So, it's great. And if you like that, I love Chinatown. Great. Okay. It's a board game called Chinatown. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's another one that's like super greasy. Making wheeling and dealing all day.
One of them that I really like is called Food Chain Magnate. That's that is a basically you run a restaurant.
Okay.
And you compete for staff, training, marketing. Like, so you market your restaurant. It's kind of has a real estate element as well, because location is part of it.
Yeah, love that.
They just released an expansion too. It's one of those games, and I know you're familiar with this, but it's like, it's limited printing. So
yeah, it's very hard to find.
Yeah. It's hard to find, or it's just expensive. I ended up finding a good deal, and I got it a few years back. I've tried to get my kids to play with me. It's been a little hard, because I think the cutthroat part, they kind of get because especially my 16-year-old, I don't go easy on them.
Love cutthroat. Let's go.
Yeah.
Grease
And he
Town,
does.
Grease Town all day. Let's do it.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, even even when he like solo games, there's a ton of solo games out there or solo variants of that game. Um, you know, that like, well, here's two things. I have two games up on my screen that I wanted to bring up at some point. Because there are two games that I bought because of you. So one was, speaking a little bit of Cutthroat, was Sheriff of Nottingham.
Love it. Actually played it last weekend with my brother.
Yeah,
It's one of my brother's all-time favorites.
yeah, which is always just like, basically the premise
Greasiest.
of that game is you're trying to go into the market with your goods, but you have illegal goods, and everybody gets a turn to be the sheriff, and you
Trying to
have to
get
say,
trying to sneak shit across the board if you can.
yep. So that's great. My kids actually do like that one.
Sheriff's great.
Um,
They just
yeah,
put out a second version of that, which is the version 2 is it's all new art, and it's got the expansions included in it as well.
yeah. So no, I'll have to look into that one. The other
Great.
one, speaking of artwork, is Scythe. That's
Oh,
probably that the
it's insane.
artwork in that game is phenomenal. I don't like just the mech version and kind of, was it like World War I type
Yeah,
timeline?
it's amazing. And
Um,
there's a group of guys, I forget, I think those guys actually have like a site where you can upgrade all of the elements in the game, and you can get like meeples for everything. So you can get like wheat
okay,
and the barrels and all that, and it's just even more immersion. But
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like a 40-minute setup. But the game is not that complex. It's just
no,
classic, like these are your steps: 1, 2, 3, and 4. And on those steps, you can do X, Y, and Z, but you can only pick one. What are you going to do? And that's
right,
the big difference, right, between the Amero and the European style. Like the
yep,
American gameplays is all it's luck and then skill, and the Euro model is all a lot of skill and then luck. So
yep, yeah, and there, yeah, like you dominate. Like you could kind of think, okay, there's different factions or armies, right? So you can almost think it's like Risk at first,
yeah,
but there's different ways you can dominate the board, right?
totally
Same thing with when I was mentioning that food chain game. It's like, yeah, you could try to like make the most burgers, or you could try to kind of outmarket your competition in some way, or
great.
have the better staff and training, and
And you
there's
can
ways to
win,
make more
and you
money.
can win anyway.
Yeah, yeah, and I think there's also the other part, like especially when I found, like, I try to introduce it to whether my kids or friends, is I'm like, oh, there's this really great game, and then they see this rule book that's like 20 pages
It's not that
plus.
bad. It's just detail.
Yeah,
That's all it is. Everybody,
yeah,
relax. Don't be afraid of if there's just because there's a lot of pieces and the rule book is big. It's okay.
hmm
All
yeah,
right.
yeah,
It'll be all right. Give it a
yes,
chance.
yeah. Just because the box of my favorite game weighs 30 pounds.
If you saw Monopoly and didn't know
Yeah,
anything about it, you're like, I'm not playing this game. Look at all these pieces in here.
yeah,
Same thing.
yeah. So it's funny. It seems some of the war games that, like my brother-in-law, when I mentioned earlier, that's what he's really into. Not like Memoir 40, like I forget, was it
Memoir's great.
Axis and Allies, I think, is
Great
the one
one.
he's really
Old school
into. Yeah,
classic stuff.
yeah. So he's really into those. I get into the dungeon crawlers
Love
personally.
that. Yeah,
Um,
5 Minute Dungeon's great too.
yeah, I've been considering getting that one. I haven't,
Good
I've
one.
been, but I've mentioned to you, Gloomhaven is by far my favorite game.
Jesus, that's a monster.
Yeah, that's the 30-pound box, and I got another one coming later this year. Their new one, Frosthaven. But I've that literally, because I have a table in my basement, that has pretty much been on my table for the past year.
Love it.
I took it down once because we were going on vacation, because I just felt like a pipe burst because it's in the basement, just that type of thing. But no, I mean, it takes about half hour to 45 minutes to set up.
Yeah, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I think like all that, like in conclusion, like I think like all that's going to be part of like where people are going to go, like the action figure world, the board game world, video game world, all
Yeah.
that pop culture stuff that people think is like whatever, like, it's all coming, and the licensing element in it. Anything that's being heavily licensed is going to be part of where the money's being made. I mean, remember Lego almost went out of business until they licensed Harry Potter, and now look at
Yep.
Lego. It's insane.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
pops are the same way. Every time that you think that they can't think of anything else, I think eventually the pops are going to run out of a licensing because they have so many things licensed. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, like, just to go back to that game, Gloomhaven, they just launched their own comic books.
Because they can. And
Yeah.
they probably sold out in 6 minutes.
Oh yeah. I mean, the Frosthaven game last year when they did the Kickstarter, they raised $12 million.
In 22 minutes.
Yeah, it was like ridiculous.
I know.
Yeah, they were just like, they weren't even ready for it. Like, they were like, oh, we'll have the game out by March of 2021. And here we are in April, and they're like, well, now it's going to be October because we have so many. They got so much money, I guess, so much. They raised so much money. They were like, we're making the game bigger because we're adding characters. We're, adding 30 scenarios, whatever it was. But yeah, it's just like, $12 million. They probably raised $12 million literally in a week.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, and when it's the same as good food. If you make good food, people will find it.
Yeah.
And it's, if you make a good game, people will find it.
Yeah. No, it's yeah. So it's interesting, like, running into you and you opening up. I mean, like, I'm sure Tiki has people on those tables all weekend long.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I mean, before everything happening, yeah, it was nonstop. So
yeah. So it's,
and you've got a whole generation now that has children. So now that we're just raising our kids as nerds.
Yeah.
And that's just what it is. So that's what's happening. I'm ready for it. Let's go.
Yeah. So no, it's good. Well, I'll bring it back to what I do. The funny thing is, when we were talking about video games and stuff like that, the presentations in architecture have become more gamified.
Awesome.
They're Twin Motion, which is one of the rendering software. They were bought by Unreal, the Unreal Engine.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
So to have the ability now.
So Epic owns them.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So it used to be like, if we were doing a project, great, Revel, now down Ocean Sea. Like I said, I worked on that project when it was first coming out, in 2007. When they made their big announcement, it was like 3 or 4 high resolution renderings that were static images. Maybe there might have been a video of like a flyover of it or something, but it was pretty much like, hey, here's Revel, $2.5 billion casino. Here's a picture from above. Here's a picture from here. Here's a picture from there. And that was it. Now
you do a full 3D walkthrough.
People want the immersion. They want the VR. They're comfortable with grabbing an Xbox controller and moving through
a building,
the building, and it's just like, the quality of those really high renderings to the game, like I'll call it the gamified, is, I mean, I would say the newer, like the game type engines isn't as good, but it's getting there.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, if you can run the Unreal Engine at full capacity, or you can run the Frostbite engine or the ID Tech or any or the Glacier, like all those engines are ridiculous.
Yeah. So it's coming through, not only, you can think of the medical field, where we were talking about like stuff with online, let's say there's a company that's developing some type of equipment in a surgery room. Now they can virtually test that stuff out.
Yeah.
Right.
It's endless, man. It really is. And then you've got things like HoloLens coming in and which is now kind of integrated itself into Microsoft Mesh, and AR and MR are just going to becoming the norm within the next couple of years. It's going to be the way they're going to teach everybody is through MR and AR. So
yeah. Well, AR is where I think there's a lot of possibilities. What is MR? I've never heard of
MR is mixed reality. So it's utilizing the environments themselves to like fully integrate so like if I have put my glasses on, I come up, I can have all my Spotify records across my whole room. And I can be like, oh, cool. What's that? Play that.
Yeah. It's the, what's the Tom Cruise movie? Not Mission
Impossible. It's all Minority Report, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I've seen things like, for me, I've seen it, you could actually place like real world points on like a architecture model. And I could stand in the middle of the field that's going to build like, let's say, a new school or something.
That's what
I
I'm
could
saying.
stand right where the gymnasium's going to be.
That's coming.
Yeah.
It's already here, but it's just expensive.
Yeah. Some of it's like you used to have to hold like an iPad in front of you and kind of like,
Not anymore.
but yeah, it'll be, this is all great stuff.
Love it, man.
So cool. Well, actually, I kind of did the game thing already. I was going to bring them up on the screen, but it came into the conversation. So,
Well, this was great, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It was like awesome to kind of chat and get everything situated. So it's there's
Yeah.
a lot of stuff going on, man. Just gotta be
Yeah.
aware. It's hard to not be an old guy and get lost in the dust, to tell you what.
Oh yeah. No, and I think we got to figure out a time to bring some of these games out and get on the table together and
Let's go. All about it.
yeah.
Love that.
Because I think I'm personally just sick of doing. I mean, this is great getting on Zoom, but
I know.
this
Let's
this
play
ain't
something.
it.
Let's play something, man. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let me know when. I'll be there.
All right, cool. All right, well, yeah, Ryan, thanks a lot for coming on.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and
Good stuff. Well, follow if you're on the internets. Where's Harb? Find me. I'm on LinkedIn. Let's connect. Follow me on Instagram. Nothing crazy on the Instagram. Switched it up. So if you want to know all the random games that I play in my game room, that's where to find me. So
yeah, and you just beat me to my question. Like how do you get in touch with you and all that.
Let's
stuff.
connect.
Yeah.
Clearbridgebranding.com. Check us out if we can help you grow your brand.
Cool. All right, Ryan. Well, thanks again, and we'll just throw some more Steely Dan, and we'll
Love that.
Yeah.
See you, everybody. Be safe.